All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all glory, honor, and praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, double honors to the apostle elders of Great Millstone who rule well, and salutations to all you brothers out there pushing this word in love, truth, sincerity, and humility. Once again, it's the brother Shati from the Chicago camp coming back to you with what I hope is another quick and edifying sit down. And of course, as you know, us being the prophets and the watchmen, we have to, as the scripture says, be occupied in prophecy, and we have to have a certain eye for catching things. Okay. And right now, the big thing is the government shutdown. But in the midst of all this excellent news regarding the government shutdown, I just so happened to see this on Lisa Haven's website, and it says, "No one saw this coming. Something happening in April that should deeply concern you." And it was involving the trucking industry. Now, I'm just going to let this video play, and if something happens where I can bring out some scripture or expound on, I'll do. But for the sake of time, let's just get this started.
Hi everyone, Lisa Haven here. Well, something is happening this April 2019 that could impact or hurt you, your family members, or your loved ones. What am I talking about? Well, let me take you back to December 2017 so you can get the general idea of what's happening, and then I'm going to move it forward. But back in December 2019, the United States government, via the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, implemented a federal regulation that required large commercial motor vehicles to basically use electronic logging devices to log their hours. So that way the government knew exactly how many hours they drove electronically. However, it sounds good on the surface, but this caused a lot of truckers to protest it because, in a nutshell and kind of a short grievance on what they're claiming, is these electronic devices affect everything from their sleep patterns to when they go to load and unload, because it can take massive amounts of time to unload and load. There's no real time frame. It could take an hour, it could take 6 hours, but it would affect their logging hours and how they could work everything, thus affecting their pay as well as their sleep time. And I believe they have a legitimate grievance, which is one reason I'm bringing it to you. But the second reason, because if this does happen and they end up shutting down this coming April, even for a 24-hour period, it is going to impact us all in some way, shape, or form. But as a result of this regulation being forced...
Right. And this is very true, because now they have a system in place where, for lack of a better phrase, these truckers are being micromanaged. Okay. I just so happened to, one of my neighbors, he's in the trucking, and he said the system wasn't always like this. You could log in your times, and there was ways that you could do it and you could properly get paid, but now they want everything electronically done. And if my memory serves me correctly, he was saying that now you don't get paid strictly for your road time. It's one of those things where as soon as you clock in, okay, they're counting that as your time on the clock. So you have that on top of them limiting the hours that you could drive on the road. Now that heavily cuts into profit. All right, because some of these drivers, the truck drivers, they're only getting maybe, I don't know, maybe 20 cents, 30 cents a mile, maybe, and I believe you might be able to make more if you're an owner operator, but you're talking about where you could strictly get paid for your mileage and that was your time. Now it's one of those things where you have to clock in at a certain time, and once you do that, they count that as your working time as well. So instead of you being on the road for maybe 12 hours for that day, and you getting paid for that time being on the road. Now it's one of those things that once you clock in, that's when your time starts with you getting paid. So that's the loading time, or if my memory serves me correctly, as I said, as he told me this. So this is the loading time, the time you have to make sure everything's correct. And now instead of you being able to have 12 hours on the road, now you only have 8 hours on the road because you had to use all that time loading up your truck. So this new federal electronic system heavily cuts into the profit, and it micromanages the crew. So let's continue.
On them a little before it happened. They actually formed two groups in protest. The first one on the screen here is called ELD or Me, which was founded May 14th, 2017, right before the FMCSA made their implementation. And that group has over 22,000 members. Then another was also formed, Operation Black and Blue, and that came on June 15th, 2017, just before the announcement in December. Well, as a result of this, they also have a page, and I'm going to take you to that page directly here. This is truckerstandas1.com. This is where they've actually written a letter to the Trump administration talking about all the information and talking about some of their grievances, which their grievances include, you can see this here, the Unfunded Mandate Act, parking hours of service, cybersecurity, and constitutional rights. And they all kind of hone in on that electronic lodging devices. So a lot of those categories are linked to problems that they're having with these electronic logging devices. But they are taking an issue, and we must remember that truck drivers are the heartbeat of America. They are what make everything function and run. They're why we have food at the grocery store, why we have medical supply at the hospital, why we get our mail delivered, and they're very vital to our country. And this is why I'm making a report about it and saying we need to pay attention. Well, they have since then formed a Facebook group calling for a protest on April 12th, basically a shutdown. Check it out. Here's the Facebook page. Black Smoke Matters is what they're calling it. And this is announcing a coming shutdown that's to happen April 12th, 2019. Now, let me say this. Back earlier January, when I checked the webpage, there was only around 9,000, 8,000 some odd members. Well, today, that number has doubled, and we're about weeks away from the beginning of January. Imagine what those numbers will reach coming this April. So I foresee that this could affect a majority, if not a good chunk, of our truckers currently, which again is why we need to pay attention that this is happening. Now, the next question we need to ask ourselves is, what repercussions could this have on the economy? How is it going to affect us? And why we should contact our congressmen and ask them to help our truck drivers and pay attention to what's going on. But here's what I found. Check out this website, and this is called Trucking Moves America Forward. When trucks stop, America stops. And here's what I found. I found a timeline showing the deterioration of major industries following some sort of truck stoppage. Again, this is why I'm bringing attention to it. So within a 24-hour period, here's what happens. Delivery of medical supplies to the affected area will stop. Hospitals will run out of basic supplies such as syringes and catheters within hours. Radiopharmaceuticals will deteriorate and become unusable. Service stations will begin to run out of fuel. Manufacturers using just-in-time manufacturing will develop component shortages, and obviously United States mail and other deliveries is going to stop, depending on who's all involved in the shutdown. Here's the after or within one day. This is what we could see. So this is what we might witness with a 24-hour shutdown, depending on who's all involved. But food shortages will begin to develop. Automobile fuel availability and delivery will dwindle, leading to skyrocketing prices and long gas lines at the pump. So you're going to be waiting for your gas. Without manufacturing components and trucks for product delivery, assembly lines will shut down, putting thousands out of work. Now, keep in mind, that's just within the first day to 24 hours of a shutdown. Now, obviously.
Now, you heard that, right? All that is going to happen within one day. All right. She said there's going to be a limitation in gas. So that means you're going to have long lines. You're going to have people waiting to get gas. All right. And folks may still, you got a lot of folks that still have jobs. Okay. So they're going to have to go to these gas stations where gas is scarce. And that's when you're going to see that gas at $10-some a gallon. That's when you're going to see people trying to siphon gas from other people's cars, because that's how scarce that resource is going to be. All right. You're going to have factories that are going to shut down, because if there's no truck to bring product to the warehouse, what good is the workers? You see what I'm saying? And she also mentioned something very important when it comes to the realm of the health industry. Okay? These hospitals, these urgent aid care places, these physical therapy places, these dialysis centers, they heavily depend on trucking. And the reason why they have to depend on trucking is because you have people who are constantly coming in their hospitals sick, and you have people who have very, as they say, chronic diseases where they depend on certain medications that they have to take every single day. You have people in such bad chronic conditions where they can't go 1 or 2 days without it. You have medications that keep people from totally experiencing the worst effects of CHF and diabetes or sepsis and MRSA. All these type of things. If they strike for 1 day, all of this is going to happen. All right? And I can already tell what she's going to lead up to. Well, let's continue.
It will take a couple of days and we will recuperate from that. No problem, but there will be short-term problems with that. But if you take it a little further, say within 2 to 3 days, if it were to go longer, here's what else. In addition to everything we could see, food shortages escalate, face of hoarding and consumer panic, supplies of essentials, bottled water, powdered milk, these kinds of things are going to disappear. ATMs will run out of money. You're not going to be able to get the cash if obviously those trucks are involved in the stand down or the shutdown, Service stations completely run out of fuel, no more fuel. Garbage trucks will stop distributing and picking up. Container shipments will sit idle. Those aren't going to get picked up. Say within a week. Now we're talking automobile travel will cease due to lack of fuel. Hospitals will begin to exhaust oxygen supplies. After 2 weeks, then add to that, the nation's clean water supply is going to begin to run dry. And after 4 weeks, the nation will exhaust its clean water, and water will be safe for drinking only after boiling. These are the kinds of devastations that we couldn't witness. And even further on that report, it goes on to talk about if it continues at that point, we could see some sort of civil unrest. But this is why I wanted to bring it to you, not because I'm a fear monger.
Yep. So the moral of this story is, all right, because these truck drivers are forced into a federal system where it's micromanaging them and taking away their money, they're going to be forced to strike. Okay? And if these truck drivers strike, everything is going to come to a screeching halt, which is going to lead to the purge. Okay? So we're going to go to 2nd Ezra 15 and 14, and it says, woe to the world and them that dwell therein. All right, means destruction to the world and the people that live in it. It said, for the sword and their destruction draweth nigh, and one people shall stand up to fight against another, and swords in their hands. For there shall be sedition among men, and invading one another, that they shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. All right, because when these supplies run short, people are going to get very desperate. And you put this trucking strike on top of the government shutdown. So you're telling me folks are not going to have money and they're not going to have goods? That's going to create a very, very desperate scenario. And we all know when folks get desperate, they do desperate things. All right. And it says, a man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able to. All right. It's gonna get to a point where you're gonna have truckers that want to do their job and want to go, but they're not gonna be able to because they're not getting paid. All right, doesn't even the scripture say if a man don't work, he don't eat? Or why should a man go to work if he's not going to get paid for it? That don't make any sense. And it says, for because of their pride, the city shall be troubled, the houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid. And it says, a man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy their houses with the sword, and spoil their goods because of the lack of bread and for great tribulation. Now, bread, granted, yes, is food, but bread, with the scripture, things are manifold, okay? The lack of bread could just basically mean the lack of goods as well. And as Lisa stated in the video, there's going to be a lack of food, which means people are going to starve. There's going to be a lack of gas. People won't be able to go where they want to go because there's no gas. Okay, that also goes into a man of desire to go into a city and he won't be able to because there's no gas. All right. Businesses are going to close down because they're not getting paid. So those folks are going to get desperate and they're going to start robbing. And then she also mentioned, as I said before, the health industry. Do you know how many people depend on oxygen on a daily basis? People with congestive heart failure, which we call CHF. You have people who have chronic emphysema. You have people with chronic bronchitis. Okay. You have people with lung cancer. You have people who are septic. All right. Just means they have an infection. All right. People on dialysis. All right. Many of these people highly depend on oxygen, amongst other things. Okay. And so you willing to tell me that if you have a family member and their mother or their father may need some medication and these trucks stop and they can't get it, you better believe that those folks are going to try to raid a hospital or raid somewhere to get those goods so they can help their family member. As Lisa said, this trucking thing, if they strike, that's going to be huge. Everything is just going to stop. It's going to come to a complete halt. And as she said, it's going to lead to civil unrest. It's going to lead to the purge. And of course, all this is planned out because the purge eventually leads to the chip. Okay, because this is the year of Charagma. And you people better wake up and smell the coffee, as they say. This is going to be a very serious thing to keep your eye on. Okay? So that's all I wanted to bring out. I just wanted to bring some attention to this topic because I know, as I said before, this government shutdown is a huge thing going on, and not only in the mainstream, but the alternative media realm. But at the same time, we have to also keep track of the little things that are happening within the grand scheme of things, and this is one of them. So I hope you were edified and you learned something. So with that being said, I want to give all glory, honor, and praises to Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai. Double honors to the apostle elders of Great Millstone who rule well. And salutations to all you brothers out there pushing this word in love, truth, sincerity, and humility. With that, we want to say shalom.